Hey guys, today I'm going to be giving you fantasy recs from a fantasy reader. Honestly, the best place to start if you've never read any fantasy before would be doing something like Cozy Fantasy, which Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands are two amazing cozy fantasies. There's subplots of romance that are so good. I love these books, like they're 6-star reads for me, so good place to start. If you don't like a cozy fantasy, that's also okay. Under the Oak Tree is kind of cozy fantasy in the sense that the stakes are just really low. We mainly just follow our main character Maxie on a journey she goes on. On this journey, she has to marry a knight, and then he leaves for a year, and she has no idea when he's going to return. This one definitely has higher stakes. I know that cozy fantasy is not everyone's thing, so another good place to start for fantasy, ACOTAR would be an amazing place to start for fantasy. Even though it's so talked about so much, it has a reason. It is a good book. Feyre is 19 and she kills a wolf. Sorry, it has been so long since I read this book. Feyre is 19 and she kills a wolf who she doesn't know is actually a fairy. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it is so good. Highly romance focused, so definitely more romantic-y, but still good. And then if you finish this book and love it, don't worry, there's multiple more books in the series, like A Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Wings and Ruin. A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruin come immediately after ACOTAR to continue the series. And then there's a novella. So after these books, there's a novella, and then you read A Court of Silver Flames. A Court of Silver Flames is basically like Nesta and Cassian's story, and there's a lot more that goes down, but whew, the romance in this one is so good. It's so good. Okay, now let's say you finish ACOTAR and you enjoy it. Where should you go next? I believe that you should read Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass. Let's talk about Throne of Glass. This is also a really great place to start if you've never read fantasy and you want to just dip your toes in it. Throne of Glass is amazing because you'll be sucked in it immediately. So we have an assassin that has to go through a competition to win to be the King's Blade. And obviously, this is book 1. This is the rest of the series. More happens, and it's just the found family in this series is unlike anything else I've ever read. So I do highly recommend this series. If you finish that series and you're like, damn, that was really good, don't fret, you have 3 more books to read by the same author. Then you'll go read the first Crescent City book, the second Crescent City book, and the last Crescent City book. And now you have completed the Sarah J. Maas universe. If you're wanting an easy-to-read fantasy series, you should definitely go and try City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This series is also interconnected, so the more books you read in the series, the more it makes sense, but this is the base start. Honestly, any Cassandra Clare book is a great place to start if you've never read any fantasy books before, because they're really easy to understand. And this series specifically takes place in modern world, so there's still, there's phones and cars and stuff, but they have powers on top of it. So it's an urban fantasy, technically, where books like Prison Healer are set in more Regency times and different things like that. City of Bones is today. So now, if you're not looking for something as low as cozy fantasy, but something slightly higher than ACOTAR, a good high fantasy is The Shadow of the Gods. Honestly, this book is high fantasy, but it's so good. I'm gripped to the page when I read it. There's little to no romance in this book, but it's very heavily fantasy focused. So there are dragons, there's gods. It is, I think, there's some Viking vibe to it. I don't know what the era of that's called. I'm sure there's a name, but that's what you get from this book. I loved it. And I'm not a high fantasy reader. This really got me into that genre. But yes, I really love it, and if you want to dip your toes into fantasy, then go straight in, then this is the book for you. Some other books that would be good to get into fantasy are The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Basically it's kind of historical fiction fantasy, where a girl makes a deal with the devil that now she can live forever, but no one will ever remember her name, and everything's fine and dandy until a boy remembers her. Yeah, This one definitely has more focus in the romance genre. The fantasy element obviously is there, but it's really more, I feel like, a love story. And the historical fiction in this is also amazing. If you can't tell, it's a 6-star read. That's why I'm taking so much longer to talk about this one. But I feel like this would be a great place to start for someone who's never read fantasy. Like, this will get you right into it, because there's not enough fantasy for you to be confused, but there's not too little where you're like, did I just read historical fiction? Divine Rivals is another great book to help you get into fantasy. This book is so beautifully written. It is a story of love on so many levels. And, like, I don't even want to say too much because I don't want to ruin it for y'all, but this book truly is an amazing book. And the fantasy is so interesting. It's also not there as much as big fantasy books, but the fantasy element in this is so interesting and it's so good. And there are gods in this book and stuff like that to have more fantasy, but you don't really get much of those in the first book. But if you like the first book, always read the second. If you only read romance but want to try fantasy, a good book for you would be Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. Why, you ask? Well, dragons, first of all. And this book is so heavy on the romance. Every tab, I think, is a romance thing. But this book is so good. The romance is amazing. It's steamy. I will say it's steamy. But, this book is so good. There are dragons, a dragon riding school. There are secrets that get uncovered, and then more answers come in the second book. And the cliffhanger for this book. Like, are you kidding me? These books are amazing. They're overhyped, yes, but they're amazing. So, if you want to try fantasy for the first time, these two might be good places to start. That is my getting into fantasy. Hope this helps some of y'all who really want to get into fantasy like I am. And I hope y'all find a book you love from this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!